What happens when a CEO walks into his own bar in disguise and discovers his staff can't even afford dinner after their shift? Welcome back, brilliant viewers. You've got a sharp eye for powerful stories, and this one's unforgettable. Tonight, we dive into the gritty world behind the bar lights, where loyalty is earned, not expected. When one owner trades his office for an apron, the truth he uncovers isn't just eye-opening, it's game-changing. So grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's explore a story where respect, redemption, and real leadership take center stage. This one might just stay with you. Jordan Reyes had spent the past 5 years turning his 6-bar chain into a profitable name across the city's nightlife scene. A former bartender turned entrepreneur, he knew how to balance brand image with business strategy, but something about Bar Eclipse, his original flagship location, had been gnawing at him for months. Reviews had taken a sharp downturn, complaints about rude service, broken bathrooms, stale drinks, and long wait times kept popping up online. Friends who used to frequent the place now offered polite excuses. When Jordan asked his regional supervisor Connor what was going on, he was met with a dismissive wave. "Just a tough crowd at night, they're holding it down," Connor said. But Jordan didn't believe it. He had built Bar Eclipse from the ground up. He knew what tough crowds looked like, and he knew when something deeper was wrong. So without telling a soul, he made a decision. He would go undercover. He grew out his beard, swapped his usual pressed button-downs for faded t-shirts and jeans, and created a fake resume under the name Joe Alvarez. With the help of an old friend in HR, he had himself placed on the roster as a new barback for the Thursday-Sunday graveyard shifts. He added thick glasses and a ball cap to dull recognition, and even practiced a slight limp just in case. By the time he showed up for his first shift at 10 p.m. on a Thursday, no one gave him a second glance. Just another tired face behind the bar. But Jordan's heart pounded as he stepped through the back entrance of Bar Eclipse. The smell of stale beer and industrial cleaner hit him like a wave. Music thumped faintly through the walls. From that moment, he wasn't the owner anymore. He was just Joe, the new guy, ready to mop floors, stock liquor, and get a first-hand look at what had gone wrong in the place that once made him proud. Jordan's first hour as Joe at Bar Eclipse was a masterclass in dysfunction. The moment he stepped into the back room, he nearly slipped on a puddle of melted ice from a broken cooler that no one had bothered to mop. The air was thick with heat and fryer grease. The ventilation clearly hadn't been serviced in months. Behind the bar, 2 bartenders hustled to serve drinks, their movements fast, but their faces drawn and tired. Neither looked up when the floor manager, Troy, sauntered by holding a clipboard but doing little else. Jordan introduced himself to Raina, a waitress with sharp eyes and a sharper tone, who barely acknowledged him before tossing a rag his way. "Try to keep the soda gun from flooding again," she said. He followed her instruction, but the nozzle kept sticking, dribbling syrup into a growing puddle beneath the register. The PAW system glitched twice in 10 minutes, freezing up during a customer order and requiring Raina to handwrite tickets while muttering under her breath. Jordan noticed Troy watching from the far end of the bar, feet up, texting. Every time a spill happened or a glass broke, he barked at staff to move faster, but never offered help. No one challenged him. There was no rhythm, no morale, just exhausted bodies doing barely enough to get through the night. The bar's lighting was dim, not by design, but because half the bulbs were out. The shelves were half-stocked, sticky with old liquor spill. Even the music system cut out randomly, requiring Marcus, the younger of the 2 bartenders, to reset it by kicking the cabinet under the soundboard. When Jordan peeked at the supply closet, he found torn gloves, mismatched cleaning supplies, and a leaking mini-fridge that had been unplugged and forgotten. It wasn't just neglect. It was an ecosystem of decay that had clearly been tolerated for too long. Everything looked fine from the customer side, but behind the bar it was clear. The place had been running on fumes. Jordan realized then that no report from Connor could have prepared him for what he was witnessing. This wasn't just poor management. It was a system that had stopped caring, and the people inside it were just trying to survive. By midnight, the bar had settled into a lull. No rush, just the steady hum of tired regulars nursing their drinks and the low clink of glassware. Jordan, still in character as Joe the barback, found himself restocking limes when he overheard voices from behind the service well. Marcus, the younger bartender, was flipping a rag over his shoulder as he leaned closer to Leo, the older veteran. "I swear," Marcus muttered, "if it weren't for Elijah's asthma meds, I'd have quit already." Leo didn't miss a beat. "Yeah, well, rent went up again. I'm still making the same damn $10.75 I was 3 years ago." The bitterness in his voice wasn't loud, but it was deep. Jordan's hand paused over a crate of tonic water. They didn't know he was the owner, and clearly they weren't holding back. "They keep saying there's no room in the budget," Marcus added. "Meanwhile, we're doing the work of 4 people. No barback, no busser. Troy just sits on his ass." Leo gave a dry chuckle and poured another drink. "Last week I asked about that raise they promised us in spring. Troy said it was still processing. That's code for not happening." The conversation hit Jordan like a punch to the chest. He had personally approved raises across the company 6 months ago. So where had the money gone? As he bussed a tray of empty glasses, he watched Marcus juggle 2 drink orders while resetting the sound system again. Leo was limping slightly but kept moving. They were both clearly dedicated, burned out but loyal to the job, or maybe just to survival. Jordan suddenly felt the crushing weight of the gap between what he thought he knew and what was real. These weren't just employees, they were people carrying invisible burdens, working through exhaustion, medical bills, and a lack of support, and no one in management seemed to be listening. Jordan realized then that the heart of the business wasn't the menu or the branding, it was these people, and they were drowning. The mission was no longer just to fix a failing location, it was to restore dignity where it had been quietly lost. The silence between orders was thick when Raina finally broke it. She leaned against the back counter, arms crossed, watching Joe Jordan wipe down the bar taps with quiet focus. "So," she said flatly, "how long are you planning to stick around?" Jordan looked up, caught off guard by the question. "Just trying to learn the ropes," he replied. Raina smirked, not buying it. "Ropes are frayed," she muttered. "And if you're waiting for someone to teach you how this place runs, you'll be waiting a while." She grabbed a stack of napkins, refilling a holder, and then turned toward him more directly. "You want to know what it's really like here?" she asked. "I've covered 3 people's jobs in 1 shift, cleaned puke off the bathroom floor, paid for a customer's short tab out of my own tips because our system charged them wrong again, and Troy said arguing would be bad optics." Her voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. "I've worked through fevers, missed my sister's funeral because no one would cover. You think this is just a rough patch? This is how it's always been, at least on nights." Jordan listened silently, the weight of her words pressing into his chest. Raina tossed the now empty napkin box into a bin. "We used to care. We used to hustle hard because it felt like we mattered. Now, we're ghosts, holding this place together while management scrolls Instagram in the office." She didn't ask for pity. Her tone held none. It was just the truth, plain and raw. And Jordan knew that this, more than any report, was the kind of feedback that could save or destroy a business. She wasn't venting for attention. She was giving him a chance to listen, really listen, and he wasn't going to waste it. If there was one constant in Bar Eclipse's chaos, it was Troy, the night manager, whose presence was somehow both visible and useless. Jordan had observed him all night from behind crates of beer and stacks of dirty glassware. Troy would appear with a clipboard in hand, strolling behind the bar like a parade marshal, calling out vague commands with the flair of someone who thought the title manager excused him from actual work. When the POS system froze again, he barely glanced up from his phone. When Raina asked for extra clean rags, he told her to improvise. At one point, Jordan saw Marcus struggling to carry a tray of fresh stock through the cramped back hallway, while Troy leaned against the cooler door, not even bothering to hold it open. "Keep up, Marcus," he called lazily, "or get replaced." The words didn't carry urgency, just entitlement. Jordan gritted his teeth. During a brief moment of quiet, Troy finally slid into a booth, put his feet up, and opened a food delivery app. He ordered wings, chuckled at a meme, and stayed there for nearly an hour, untouched by the stress his team was buried under. No register checks, no walkthroughs, no equipment inspections. Yet he had signed off on the pre-shift checklist Jordan had found earlier, claiming everything from the ice machine to the soda lines had been cleaned and tested. All lies. It wasn't just neglect, it was deliberate apathy. Jordan felt a slow burn rise in his chest. He had once believed that strong leadership would trickle down through his bar teams, that a good culture could self-sustain. But watching Troy glide through his shift like a ghost of accountability, Jordan saw the painful truth. Leadership hadn't just failed. It had abandoned the people who needed it most. It was nearly 2:30 a.m. when the last customer wandered out of Bar Eclipse, leaving behind a trail of peanut shells and 2 half-finished cocktails. The hum of the refrigeration units replaced the noise of the crowd, and the staff moved into cleanup mode, tired, mechanical, silent. Troy had disappeared into the office again. Raina leaned against the bar, rotating her sore ankles. Jordan set down the crate of backup glassware and looked around. This was the moment. He wiped his hands on a bar towel, took a breath, and walked toward the center of the room. "Hey," he called out gently. The staff looked up. "Can I talk to all of you for a second?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, still wiping down the counter. "About what?" Jordan reached up and pulled off his hat. Then he removed his glasses and let the towel fall. "My name's not Joe," he said. "It's Jordan. Jordan Reyes." Raina blinked in disbelief. "Wait, the owner?" Jordan nodded. "I bought this place 5 years ago, built the whole chain from scratch, and I've been here all week because I needed to see what was really happening." Silence followed, thick and unmoving. Marcus leaned on the cooler. "You're serious?" "Yeah," Jordan said. "Dead serious. And I heard everything. The missed raises, the broken equipment, the hours you've worked without support. I saw Troy sign off on inspections he never did. I watched him ignore all of you while you carried this place." Leo's mop stopped moving. Raina folded her arms. "So, now what?" Jordan's voice stayed even, but every word struck clean. "Now I fix it, but not by handing out apologies and disappearing again. Starting tonight, Troy's done. He's not coming back. And starting tomorrow, we're having a real meeting, off the clock, paid time. I want to hear everything, not just complaints, solutions, stories, what you've survived and what you need to keep going." He scanned their faces, tired, skeptical, but listening. "You've kept this bar alive while people like me looked away. I can't change the past, but I'm here now, and I'm staying." No one clapped. No one cried, but something shifted. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was the beginning of something new. The next afternoon, under the soft buzz of the overhead lights, Bar Eclipse remained closed to customers. A handwritten sign taped to the front window read, "Closed for staff meeting. Thank you for understanding." Inside, Jordan sat at a booth across from Raina, Marcus, and Leo, each still in partial uniform from prepping for the night shift. A pot of coffee sat untouched at the center of the table. Jordan leaned forward, hands clasped. "This isn't a performance review," he said. "It's just me listening. No managers, no filters. Tell me what's been happening, what I missed." Raina was the first to speak. "I've had to clean the same busted bathroom 3 nights a week with gloves that rip after 5 minutes. I've covered shifts back to back without breaks. I once called in sick and Troy told me to sweat it out behind the bar." She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Her voice said enough. Marcus added quietly, "I've picked up double shifts because my kids' asthma meds keep going up. I asked about that raise 3 times. Got the same line, it's processing." He shook his head. "Started delivering groceries after shifts just to cover bills." Leo cracked his knuckles slowly. "I'm 52. Been in bars longer than some of these kids have been alive. Never thought I'd be working in one where we're told not to talk to customers if they look cheap." He looked up, voice rough. "We're tired, Jordan. Not lazy. Not dramatic. Just tired of being invisible." Jordan didn't interrupt. He let the silence stretch. Let the weight of their stories settle into the room. He had once believed numbers told the truth. Revenue reports, payroll summaries, survey scores. But these were the truths that mattered. These were the costs no balance sheet could calculate. "I hear you," he said finally, his voice tight. "And I'm not here to say sorry and walk away. I'm here to work and to make it right." For the first time since the meeting started, Marcus reached for his coffee. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The silence was no longer a wall. It was an open door. The change began with a nameplate being taken down. That evening, after the staff meeting, Jordan drove straight to the regional office. He walked past reception without a word and opened the glass door to Connor's office. Connor looked up from his monitor, surprised. "Jordan, I didn't know you were in town." "Sit down," Jordan said, calm but firm. What followed was swift and surgical. Jordan laid out printed maintenance logs, employee reports, and payroll discrepancies, all cross-referenced against Connor's sanitized weekly summaries. "You told me Store 6 was stable," Jordan said. "You told me morale was high. You rerouted funds meant for staff raises and signed off on equipment upgrades that never happened." Connor's protest sputtered before it began. "I had to make choices, Jordan. Budgeting across locations. You made the wrong ones," Jordan cut in. "Repeatedly, and you kept me in the dark. You're done." Before Connor could argue further, Jordan placed a termination letter on the desk. "You'll receive formal documentation by the end of the day. Security's been notified." Connor stood slowly, stunned. "You're going to regret this." "I already do," Jordan said. He didn't stay to watch him pack. Back at Bar Eclipse, Jordan returned not as the boss, but as one of the team. He worked the line with Leo, swapped out a faulty keg with Marcus, and wiped tables beside Reyna. He took feedback in real time, asked questions, and more importantly, took action. A repair tech was already scheduled for the walk-in fan, and the soda system was finally replaced. When a regular customer complimented Reyna's speed, Jordan was there to hear it and told her directly. That's what leadership should be supporting. The next night, he stayed past close, scrubbing floors until his arms ached. No one said thank you. They didn't need to. The looks exchanged behind the bar said more than words. Not everyone trusted him yet. But they were watching. And slowly, the weight of silence was being replaced with cautious belief. Jordan wasn't there to be a hero. He was there to be present. And night by night, shift by shift, he was beginning to earn something far more valuable than authority. He was earning loyalty. Jordan knew that real change couldn't be delivered by memo. It had to be lived. So instead of returning to his office, he returned to the floor. Night after night, he showed up before the doors opened, sleeves rolled, gloves on, and ready to work. Not as an overseer, but as a barback, side by side with the crew he had once unknowingly let down. He swept, stocked, prepped garnishes, hauled kegs, and took orders when the front got slammed. When the AC shorted out again on a humid Friday, he didn't call maintenance. He borrowed a portable unit from another location and installed it himself. The staff watched him sweat like the rest of them, heard him curse under his breath while unclogging a drain, and slowly their guarded stares shifted into nods of quiet respect. But rebuilding was about more than presence. Jordan began soliciting practical ideas from the team. Marcus suggested reorganizing the dry storage for faster drink runs. Reyna proposed a rotating weekend incentive bonus. Leo flagged a safety hazard by the keg station that had been ignored for years. Every suggestion went on a handwritten list Jordan kept tucked in his back pocket, and every one of them was followed up on within the week. When new bar mats arrived and the back fridge was finally replaced, no one made a big deal, but they noticed. The chalkboard by the register was updated with quotes from the staff themselves. Small things they loved about the bar, scribbled between drink specials. It wasn't just about fixing what was broken, it was about giving people a reason to care again. At the end of one shift, Jordan caught Reyna watching him scrub the back counter. "You're still here?" she asked, half teasing. "Didn't think owners closed." Jordan looked up and smiled. "They do now." She didn't say anything, but she passed him the sanitizer spray and turned back to the floor. No applause, no speeches. But there was movement. The culture was shifting. Trust wasn't given, it was being built. Night by night, bottle by bottle, floor tile by sticky floor tile. And for the first time in too long, Bar Eclipse was starting to feel like it belonged to everyone who worked there. 3 weeks later, the rhythm inside Bar Eclipse was no longer survival, it was momentum. The sticky floors were gone, replaced by freshly polished tile. The POS system, once a nightly gamble, now ran smoothly thanks to a full tech upgrade. Staff walked in on time and stayed a little longer, not because they had to, but because something felt different. The air was still thick with fryer heat and the clink of glassware, but now it carried a new undercurrent: pride. Reyna didn't smile much, but she no longer rolled her eyes when the first rush hit. Marcus cracked jokes behind the line, and Leo started showing the new guy how to cut garnishes with proper flair. Everyone noticed Jordan's presence had gone from novel to normal. He still wore the same plain black polo, still scrubbed sinks and stocked napkins, but what had changed most was how the team looked at him. Not like a boss watching, but like someone with them. One night, as they closed up, Raina quietly handed Jordan a worn, grease-stained towel. "You missed a spot," she said with a smirk. It wasn't a jab. It was an invitation. A mark of belonging. Jordan took it with a nod, wiping down the final stretch of the bar. This wasn't about optics or damage control anymore. This was the result of showing up, listening hard, and staying when it got uncomfortable. He hadn't just fixed a bar, he'd rebuilt trust, one shift at a time. And now, for the first time, Bar Eclipse wasn't chasing a standard, it was the standard. It was just after 3 a.m. when the last overhead light dimmed inside Bar Eclipse. The rush was over, the receipts counted, and the final glasses clinked into the sanitizer. But no one was rushing to the door. Instead, Raina, Marcus, Leo, and Jordan lingered near the bar, leaning against counters with the kind of tired satisfaction that only comes after a job is done right. The silence wasn't awkward or heavy, it was earned. Jordan poured water into mismatched cups and passed them around. "To survive Friday night," he said. Marcus raised his glass. "To actually want to come back tomorrow." A quiet laugh passed between them, genuine and unforced. It wasn't just the broken systems they'd repaired, it was the weight that had lifted from the team's shoulders. Jordan had once feared his presence would be met with resentment. Instead, he'd found resilience. Loyalty, even. Not blind loyalty to a company, but to one another, to a workplace that, finally, saw them. As they turned off the last lights and stepped into the cool night air, Jordan paused at the doorway. He looked back at the space, not polished, not perfect, but alive. This place had once been just another stop in his growing business. Now it felt like a beating heart. A team that had been overlooked had become something more, a force for change, a reflection of what was possible when leaders stopped managing from a distance and started leading from the floor. He didn't say anything profound, just locked the door, turned to his crew and said, "Same time tomorrow." Rayner smirked, "Only if you're still wiping tables." And with that, they walked into the dark, tired, maybe, but not alone, not anymore. The story of Bar Eclipse reveals a powerful truth. Leadership isn't about titles, it's about presence. When Jordan Reyes, the CEO, stepped into his struggling bar disguised as a barback, he didn't just uncover broken equipment or mismanagement. He discovered the human cost of silence and neglect. For too long, his team had carried the weight of low pay, poor conditions, and indifferent leadership. But when Jordan chose to listen, to work alongside them, and to take real, visible action, trust began to grow where resentment had lived. The greatest lesson here is that respect is earned, not with policies or memos, but with effort, consistency, and humility. Real change happens when leaders stop assuming and start observing, when they ask, not command, and when they respond with action, not excuses. Jordan didn't just clean floors, he cleared a path for honest communication, accountability, and shared purpose. In doing so, he transformed a fractured staff into a united team. Bar Eclipse stands as a reminder that every workplace has a pulse, and it beats strongest when everyone, from the top down, is working in rhythm. Leadership begins where ego ends, in the trenches with your people, one shift at a time,